Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about Oracle Cloud Asset Revaluation. What our agenda in this video? Overview of revaluing assets, revaluation methods in Oracle Cloud, what asset revaluation rules, how to enable or how to set up revaluation for an asset box. First thing, overview of revaluing assets. As you know, we use revaluation to record assets in your asset box at their fair value. You can revalue assets to increase or decrease their carrying value whenever there is a change in the fair market value of the asset. Normally, you perform revaluation of assets with sufficient regularity to ensure that the carrying amount doesn't differ materially from its fair value on the balance sheet date. After revaluation of the assets are carried in the books at their fair value as of the date of the revaluations, minus any of subsequent accumulated depreciation and subsequent accumulated impairment losses. When you revalue an asset, the calculate depreciation process calculates accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment loss on the date of the revaluation, according to the revaluation method you select. What is the revaluation method? First one is the cost. Processing of the cost method, the calculate depreciation process calculates the accumulated depreciation as the difference between the gross and the net carrying amount. The process doesn't revalue the accumulated impairment loss and it remains unchanged. Here you can revalue the gross and the net carrying amount either in the same proportion or a different proportion. The second one is net book value as NPV revaluation method. The processing of this method eliminates the accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment loss against the gross carrying amount of the asset. This is the two methods of revaluation methods. Another thing I need to mention here, increase or decrease in carrying cost. The revaluation results in either increasing or decreasing the carrying cost of an asset. Asset treats the increase or decrease as follows. Increase means charged to the profit or loss account to the extent that it reverses a previous revaluation decrease of the asset. The balance, if any, is credited to revaluation reserve. Decrease means debited to revaluation reserve to the extent of any credit balance existing in the revaluation reserve in respect to the asset. The balance, if any, is charged to the profit or loss account. So this is the meaning of increase or decrease in carrying cost of the asset. Asset revaluation rules. When you're defining your asset box, you can set up default revaluation rules to determine how revaluation calculations are handled. The rules for revaluation often differ from country to country. You can override the default rules when necessary. You can set up the following revaluation rules. You can allow revaluation for cost or net book value. You can revalue depreciation reserve. You can revalue year-to-date depreciation. You can amortize revaluation reserve. You can retire revaluation reserve. You can include current period depreciation. You can revalue fully reserved assets, either life extension factor, maximum revaluations, life extension ceiling, or allow capital fund accounting. If I talk about revalue depreciation reserve, when deciding whether to revalue depreciation reserve, consider the following. You have two options, either yes or no. Yes means Oracle Assets revalues the accumulated depreciation balance at the start or end of the period in which the revaluation transaction occurred. It calculates the revalued accumulated depreciation as the difference between the revalued cost and the revalued net book value. If you select no, assets revalues only the cost of the assets and the accumulated depreciation balance remains the same. Note here, you cannot revalue depreciation reserve when using the net book value revaluation method. Because what? Because the depreciation reserve as of the revaluation date is adjusted against the asset cost. If I talk about revalue year-to-date depreciation, also you have to deciding whether yes or no. Yes means asset revalues the carrying cost of the asset at the start of the financial year in which the revaluation transaction occurs and restates the year-to-date depreciation. If you select no, assets revalues the carrying cost of the asset at the start or end of the period in which the revaluation transaction occurs and doesn't restate the year-to-date depreciation balance. If you select amortize revaluation reserve, again also you have two options, either yes or no. When deciding whether to amortize the revaluation reserve, if you select yes, the effect on revaluation asset amortizes the revaluation reserve balance over the remaining life of the asset. Assets also calculates the periodic amortization amount when it calculates the depreciation, for example, pence for the period. As the expense for the period, If you select no, the revaluation reserve balance remains unchanged. Also, I need to mention one note here. Only revaluation, impairment, and retirement transactions can change the revaluation reserve balance. If you talk about retire revaluation reserve, again, when deciding whether to retire revaluation reserve, you have two options, either yes or no. If you select yes, effect on revaluation will be the assets retires the revaluation reserve balance when the asset is partially or fully retired in proportion to the cost retired. If you select no need to retire revaluation reserve, the revaluation reserve balance remains unchanged. For the include current period depreciation, again you deciding whether to include current period depreciation. If you select yes, asset revalues the carrying cost of the asset at the end of the period in which the revaluation transaction occurs. If you select no, assets revalues the carrying cost of the asset at the start of the period in which the revaluation transactions occurs. For revalue fully reserved assets, you can revalue fully reserved asset that depreciate under all depreciation method. If you revalue fully reserved assets that depreciate under life-based method, consider the following additional rules. For the life extension factor, in most cases you must extend the asset life so its revalued carrying cost can be depreciated over one or more periods. For the maximum revaluations, you can limit the number of times you can revalue an asset as fully reserved assets doesn't revalue a fully reserved assets if the revaluation exceeds the maximum number of times you can revalue an asset as fully reserved. For the allow capital fund accounting, select this option to create accounting entries for capital fund accounting and revalue assets with the net book value method as debited in the statement of recommended accounting practice as SORP. This is overview of the asset revaluation rules. Now, how to enable re-evaluation for an existing asset book in Oracle Cloud? There are specific small steps. Do the following. First, you have to enable one lookup or FA allow reval by mentioning the asset book in the lookup code field, and you have to navigate to manage fixed assets lookups, query by this lookup. Under financial, you type the lookup, the theme, and click create icon. After that, you mention the your book name, data reference set as a common, display sequence 1, checked, start date, for example today, the meaning also your book name and description. After that, click save and close. Check allow re-evaluation flag from manage asset books to go to setup and maintenance, search manage asset books, select the associated corporate book, click on the book for which you enabled the lookup. Under rules, there should be a tab called revaluation. It should have become visible now that the lookup aura underscore FA underscore allow underscore revalue was enabled. You will click on this tab and check the allow revaluation option and check cost or note book value depending on the revaluation method you want and save. Now let's get into the application to show you how to enable the lookup for the asset book and how to set up the revaluation for an existing asset book. This is the application. Let me duplicate it. Open, duplicated. Go to setup and maintain. Let me first take the asset book name. I will select this asset book, search, I will enter one, for example. Here I will take it, copy. Let me put it in Notepad. Go to setup and maintenance. Select financial as offering. Here, go to fixed assets. Select all tasks. Go to down for the manage assets, fixed assets lookups. Then you have to search, go to slides. Here you have to select, let me escape, take it, copy. Here by mentioning the asset books in the lookup code field and checking. Navigate, query for this lookup, come here, put the lookup, make search, it will be there. What is the next step? Under financial generic lookup type, this, click create icon. So where is the financials generic lookup? Come here, this is generic lookup type. You can click create. Here you will put what? The book name here. Lookup code, your book name. I will select my book name. Come here, put the book name. What is the reference? As I mentioned here, you have to book command set, display sequence 1. This checkbox enabled, checked. Start date, I will put today. What is the meaning and description? The same book name. And save and close. Go up, try to save and close. It is saved and closed. After that, you have to check the allow revaluation flag from manage asset books. Again, go to setup and maintenance, select manage asset books. Here you will go to up, you will find manage asset books. You will select the theme asset book which you enabled the lookup area. You will search by it, this one, search here, click on the book, and under the rules you should be a tab called revaluation. So you can select edit, go to the rules here. Here revaluation is showing now. Before this setup it will not be enabled. Before the setup you can find reference data group, advanced rules, invoice rules. Once you enabled this lookup you will find revaluation under rules now appearing. You can make allow revaluation here by default cost and the net book value. As I said before, you can select any of these methods or rules, depends on your business requirement or business needs, and it depends on your selection here. The system will calculate the revaluation depends on these rules. Let me come back here. Once you allow, it should became visible. Now here is it's visible for the oral, and click on this tab, check the allow revaluation cost or NBV depending on the revaluation method you want, and save. Once I select allow revaluation cost and the net book value, I can press save. You must enter value for the and revaluation reserve for the loss cost. Okay. Again, let me here, revaluation reserve, retired gain and loss. I will select any two accounts. Let me try to save. Now it's saved. So this for calculate reserve, retired gain or loss after you make the revaluation for any assets. And here you selected the allow revaluation for the cost and the net book value. Now save and close. Done. Let's make an revaluation for any existing assets as example to check what will happen after we revalue the asset. Now let's revalue one existing assets. Go to assets. Let me query for any existing assets. Let me select search. I can go down, select any of these assets. There is 180. Okay, let me come back here. Go to assets. Go to tasks. Here you will find revalue assets selected. Here you can search or create a new one. The same book. Next. Go to transaction group. It's number this. The method I will select cost. The comment you can put 180. The asset number. Here from 180 to 180. And the percent, the value type will be percent or amount and fair value or fair value. I will keep it as percent and put it here 20. Here you can include current period depreciation, you can revalue fully reserved assets, you can assign your employee number. After you enter the required fields, you can click on submit. It's submitted. Go to monitor process, search. Here select assets for mass transactions. Running. Sometimes ending with error, sometimes ending with status. Either this status or this, you have to select it, go to down, select and click on more. There are two files. You have to check the log file to check how many transactions succeeded, how many transactions failed. Once you open it, he will tell you the number of records processed is 1. After that, you can create the accounting and depreciation, post-mass additions. So this is the revaluation process. What is the overview of revaluing assets? Revaluation methods. What is the asset revaluation rules? How to enable revaluation for an existing any asset box. Thanks for watching. I hope to subscribe my channel. I appreciate also your questions. Thanks.